Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ALS Clinical Trials Unboxed. My name is David Taylor. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at ALS Canada. We have another great episode for you today. Just a heads up, if you do want to ask any questions, please put them into the Q&A and or into the chat, and we can pick those up as we get into the discussion. We are joined here by a very special guest who I have to say, I looked into which title was being used in the advertisement. It was Director of ALS Center of Excellence for Research and Patient Care, but also Director of Center of Innovative Medicine, also a billion other titles. But actually, if I could say what from the heart, at least, in terms of what this individual would be best introduced for, it is in terms of Canada, there's probably been no single person who has been more influential in bringing clinical trials to this country over the years. So it's an incredible pleasure to be able to hand it over to Dr. Angela Genge, who is going to present on the Pridopidine trial, the PREVAiLS clinical trial, a first phase three that we've had in the field, a true sort of industry-based phase three that we've had in quite some time. Angela, Dr. Genge, my apologies. I'm so happy to pass off the reins to you, and you can go ahead with your presentation. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dave. We will not say how long we've known each other, and I will start the presentation now. Let me know if you see the right screen. Do you see? Yes, perfect. So I will be talking about a really important trial that has now started. We've started recruiting and actually dosing in Canada. And I'm actually really looking forward to being a substantial part and really seeing Canada playing an outside role in this program. I'll show you my disclosures and we'll go straight into the drug. So Pridopidine has a really important background. We know a lot about this drug. We are trying it in more than one
Dr.
condition.
Genge, sorry,
Yeah.
we actually don't see your screen. I wasn't sure if it was just me, so we are not
Oh,
seeing your shared screen. So just, um,
hmm. Now I wonder, because I have everything here tells me I can see it. Okay. Nope, that's not giving it, huh?
nope, we don't have it yet.
Okay, let me see if I can get. Ah, I didn't click the thing.
There we go. It's
There.
coming up now.
Okay,
I wasn't sure if it was
much
just me,
better.
so I didn't want to step in, but okay,
No,
yeah. And
thank
now I
you.
think you want to go back to the start, and I can let you know when we're in presentation mode. Great.
Okay,
And perfect. You're good to go. Thank you so much.
thank goodness you called me on it, Dave. I would have finished the whole talk without the slides. Um, so today I'm talking about Pridopidine, and it's actually a really important new program. It's a phase three program, and I really hope that what we will see is an outsized participation from Canada. It has a very important history and is in fact being used um, in more than one condition, but today we'll talk about ALS. The name of this study is the PREVAiL study. It is a phase three, as Dr. Taylor said. It is an investigational product. It is not approved anywhere in the world. We are looking at bringing Canadians in from across the country, and I look forward really to being able to tell you results in a couple of years. What is Pidopidine? Pidopidine is an oral medication. It's an investigational drug. It's taken twice a day. What it does is it binds a very specific receptor. It's called the sigma 1 receptor, and it actually activates this receptor. We have data on this drug, and in particular, very strong safety data that goes back to at least up to 7 years. And we have over 1,800 participants that have been exposed to the drug. All of this is very important and very good. What does pridopidine do? There are several parts of normal function in a motor neuron that are influenced by the sigma 1 receptor. And by activating the sigma 1 receptor, we are actually improving the physical, the functioning of these motor neurons. It improves mitochondrial function, it improves synaptic function. Synaptic means communication between the neurons, or it improves transport of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factors. So it improves neurotrophic factors. It helps with autophagy, and it decreases stress. We all need to have decreased stress. It has some really important other features that are relatively unique to pridopidine. It is the sigma 1 receptor is highly expressed in the brain and spinal cord. When it enters the brain, pridopidine binds to this receptor and activates it. The receptor is in critical locations throughout the central nervous center, and it is responsible because of its role and its positioning. It is response. The sigma 1 receptor is responsible for key cellular functions known to be impaired in ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. When you lose the function completely, you actually develop juvenile ALS. And when you have a mutation in this particular receptor, you get a late onset ALS. So we have evidence in a lot of different places for why it's so important. This is our team. We're the steering committee. You know several of these people, Dr. Sukovich and Dr. Pagnoni, who were at Mass General, Dr. Vandenberg, who's in Utrecht, and Dr. Ruben van Eyck, who supports us statistically. The clinical experience with pridopidine is long, and I will take the time to go over this so you understand that this trial is coming out of really solid data that we have from previous trials. Pridopidine in ALS is best known as the regimen D in the Healy platform trial under the original design of the Healy trial. The eligibility criteria, so the patient population that went into this trial included people with sporadic and familial, possible, probable, and definite ALS by LS-Scoreal criteria. You could have symptoms of up to 3 years before entering the trial. The slow vital capacity, so the breathing function was at 50%. They had to be able to swallow because it's an oral medication, and they had to either be on stable doses of riluzole and edaravone or not taking it at all. So this was a uniform set of eligibility criteria for all of the original regimens in the Healy platform trial. The concept here was that the placebo groups were shared, so we were able to treat more patients faster before going into the open label extension. Here are the results from the Healy. This is part A of the results that we have for pridopidine that have led to the PREVAiLS study. The safety and efficacy of pridopidine, BID, was assessed. The trial enrolled, as I mentioned, a large swath of patients. The inclusion criteria were broader than traditional, and the time from symptom onset was longer than traditional. Both of these meant that we had all sorts of different patients in this trial, including people who were somewhat slower progressors. The pre-specified analysis that was shown with the pridopidine arm was that pridopidine looked like it had a benefit in function, respiratory, and speech measures and quality of life in a subgroup of the patients who entered regimen D, those who were definite by LS-Scoreal criteria and were 18 months or less from their symptom onset, so the onset of weakness. When they looked at the primary and key secondary analyses, bringing the total population, there was no benefit to pridopidine. But this subgroup that was pre-specified suggested a benefit and has led to this phase 3 trial. Additional analyses showed that the response, particularly in respiratory and speech, was important. There were other analyses done, and the exploratory analyses of survival of the subgroup that was 18 months from symptom onset suggested that the patients on Pridopidine had a longer survivals, increased survival. Also, on the flip side, is there were no additional new safety signals identified. Really important when we're talking about a phase 3 trial. Another way of looking at this was by looking at this particular subgroup, patients with definite ALS that were less than 18 months from onset of weakness. What we saw was a separation of the curves, that's what we call it, when you compare change from baseline in ALS FRSR between the treated group, which is the solid line, and the placebo group, which is the dotted line. And the difference was actually 32% slowing of decline of loss of function. The second thing that was important is to look at sort of graphs that look at favoring Pridopidine versus favoring placebo. And what you see in this kind of picture is that at week 16 and week 24 of the double blind, it was a 24-week double blind. ALS FRSR favored Pridopidine, respiratory and bulbar, and the combined motor. So we had in this subgroup, we had important results in all categories. There were further analyses done in this probable and early group, a definite probable and early group, and that indicated improvement from baseline in the articulation rate compared to the placebo group. In this photo on the left, the top line is the Pridopidine line. The bottom line is the placebo group. So you see this actual evidence of statistical significance in this particular graph with 90% slowing of decline. So retention of articulation rate. And again, when you look at the other graph on the right, you see the same sort of picture, although the difference is 63% in speaking rate. So patients presenting with definite or probable ALS less than 18 months from onset had this retention of their ability to speak and the way they spoke in the treated group. This data led to what I'm about to cover, which is the PREVAiLS study. So with all the information we had from the Healy platform trial regimen D, which although showed a negative result from the key primary and secondary of the broad population, the regimen D contributed really important data because it defined the subgroup in which responses and deemed significant responses were found. So this information was now used to design the PREVAiLS study, which is now started. The study design allows for a 4-week screening. We're looking for 500 patients around the world, and there will be 2 arms. And it's a 3-to-2 randomization. So we're used to 1-to-1 and 2-to-1. In this case, the randomization is for every 3 patients that receive Pridopidine, 2 will receive placebo. All double blind, so the investigators and the patients do not know what they're taking. Pridopidine will be given as 45 milligrams BID, which is twice a day, and the placebo will be a placebo given in the same format. Plus, SOC stands for standard of care, which is whether or not they're on stable doses of riluzole and edaravone. The 48 weeks is approximately a year. And then there's currently a 48-week open label extension. By the end of that period, we will be able to know what the degree of benefit was found with Pridopidine in patients with definite ALS. The ratio is the same. The difference is that all patients in the open label extension will be getting the real drug, but they will be still taking it twice a day. They'll still be able to be allowed to continue their other medication. The primary endpoint is the ALS FRSR, which you know as the ALS Functional Rating Scale. It has four groups of questions, some for the bulbar function, some for fine motor function, some for gross motor. So when I say fine motor, most of the questions are about the arms, the hands. Gross motor, a lot of the questions are about the leg function, and then respiratory. So that is still the primary outcome measure for this trial, change from baseline. The secondary endpoints are going to be survival at week 96, quantitative speech measures, respiratory function, and bulbar function. So we're really doing something new in this program that started in the phase 2, which is looking very carefully at how well we speak and how well the bulbar function, how well our other bulbar related functions are doing. We continue to do safety, and we'll be doing some blood biomarkers, particularly a neurofilament, but others as well. When we say international, we really mean international. So we have three sites in Canada, one at McGill, one in Ontario, one in Alberta. We have 18 sites in the US, then 35 in Europe and Israel. So a lot of different sites with access depending on how close you live to each of these sites and if you want to participate. In the US and Canada, you see our little purple dot there on Montreal as we've started enrolling. Additionally, there's a site in Southern Ontario and a site in Alberta that will be coming online and enrolling soon. In the US right now, there are two sites that are enrolling, one in Boston and one in Texas, but with a number of sites that are getting ready to open and activate and start enrolling patients, but a decent distribution across the continent. Here are the key eligibility criteria. The people with ALS need to be between the ages of 18 and 80. They need definite or probable ALS by Ellis criteria. Symptom onset, which is weakness, starting 18 months from screening. The slow vital capacity, or the measure of lung function, is now 60%, quite standard in all phase 3 trials. Able to swallow capsules and having a TRICALS risk profile score of between -6 and -2. For those of you who've never heard about the TRICALS risk profile, it's a calculation that is done based on 13 different points related to the participant's ALS presentation, blood work, other things. And it helps us now determine whether somebody is a fast progressor, a normal progressor, or a slow progressor. This study really wants to capture the normal progressors. We don't allow people with a tracheostomy or more than 22 hours per day of non-invasive ventilation. We're excluding people with mutations causing their ALS, and any prior treatment with Pridopidine, gene or antisense therapy is also excluded. They can continue the riluzole and edaravone, and they're allowed to continue Nuedexta where it's approved or being used as per the label. The study visits will comprise of very similar patterns across the entire study. We're allowing screening of up to 4 weeks. So once you start and sign that informed consent, we'll have 4 weeks to do all the testing to confirm that you're eligible to go in. And then you'll have your baseline visit where the drug will be started, but there is a 2-week period for titration to get up to 45 milligrams BID or placebo. This will continue from baseline for 48 weeks, and you'll be seen regularly During that time, questions will be asked about what has happened. You'll undergo the testing, so we have the information on all of our outcome measures. And then at the end of 48 weeks, if you wish, you can go into the open label extension that continues for at least another year. The double-blind period will look like this. The screening is completed and you get to enter the study. On day one, it's considered the start of the double-blind period. You'll have phone call on on week 2, and then you'll come back in on week 4 for your study visit 3. And you see from the cartoons that the phone calls alternate with the in-person visits. So the in-person visits are on day 1 or visit 2. There's another one on week 4. There's another one on week 12. There's another one on week 26. Another one on week 36. And then you're in person again on week 48, which is the end of the double blind period. So if you're relatively good at math, you can see there's 4 weeks between the first and second study visit, then there's 8 weeks between the second and third study visit, labeled 3 and 4. Then you go to a much longer break. You get a break of about 3 months, and then the next one being at week 36 and then on to week 48. So it gives you an idea of how frequently you have to go to the clinic. The open label extension will have a slightly different rhythm with the week 48, which is the end of the double blind, can be the start of the open label extension. You'll be called in between, but your next visit is going to be 4 weeks later at week 52. Then it goes to week 60, which is eight weeks. Then it goes to week 72, which is 12 weeks, and until the end of the open label extension. If there is a reason, a positive reason to continue, there will be a discussion about extending the open label extension, but that's not determined at this point. That's determined much later on. Summary of study visits. The main study, as I just showed you with the cartoon, there's 6 to 7 in-person clinic visits, and these visits last, and this is pretty accurate, they last about 3 hours. They're not a half an hour visit, but usually they do not take a whole day. They take about a half a day. There are 5 phone call visits, and there, if needed, there will be a safety call if you don't go into the open label extension part of the study. In the open label extension, there are fewer in-person clinic visits and fewer phone call visits, but there could be additional safety calls. The assessments that are done include the ALS FRSR, which, as you know, is a questionnaire with very specific questions about how you're functioning that day. And then we have some secondary outcome measures. Survival is straightforward. You understand that. It is survival or not using permanent assisted ventilation 24/7. Then there are speech testing that's being done. We continue to monitor how well your lung function is. We look specific at the bulbar subdomain of the ALS FRSR, and as is really important in ALS studies, we measure your quality of life again by a questionnaire. The assessments are the ones that are listed here: ALS FRSR, ALS FRSR proof, speech recordings, ALS Q40, and the SVC. These are the specific names of the outcomes I mentioned. And there are other assessments. There's always a physical and vital signs and EKGs, but there'll also be blood tests with each of these visits. The schedule of assessments, another way to look at is here. I won't spend any time on this, but it gives you an idea of what's done in each visit. Biomarker and plasma PK blood collection. So the blood test part happens at the screening visit. It happens at day 1 and week 4. And the biomarker and safety collections happen at each site for the full 96 weeks of the study. So and they're listed here. So the blood tests are a regular part of this phase 3 study. There are questionnaires to complete, I think, are important to highlight because it's really a partnership between the study coordinator and the patient or the participant. And the ALS FRSR, I think I've mentioned a couple different ways. We're going to be using a tablet to record the result. There is a second ALS FRSR proof, which has zeroes in on the functions that matter most to you as a participant. The ALS AQ40 is a very specific type of quality of life questionnaire that was developed and modified to reflect the reality of living with ALS. And it's really done to see what your quality of life is at any day, and also to see if it's changed over time in the study. And although it does not feel like it's a concrete number, like, say, your breathing test, it actually can show important changes when a drug is really making a difference. The EQ5D5L is another self-administered questionnaire, again about quality of life. The CNSLS is a questionnaire designed to look at something called pseudobulbar affect. Pseudobulbar affect is something that many ALS patients develop, and it's a loss of emotional control and some difficulties with making decisions. We call it loss of intellectual functioning, but it's really to help us see if there's a benefit on this trial. The communication participation bank is a self-reported measure looking at your ability to communicate, and then we have to always include the Columbia Suicide Severity Scale. It's part of what the regulators want to see. You'll be using things like this microphone, an Apple iPad, and then we'll be using something called the Redden Lab mobile app to measure various aspects of your speech. You'll be guided through the task, and there are things like reading things out loud, a short passage, making vowel sounds, repeated sounds. All of this is used to really analyze the quality of your sleep. There's always an order. The order of the testing is usually laid out for very specific reasons, and in part it's really to make sure that we're measuring everything consistently. So there will be a list of the health assessments and questionnaires first while you're feeling your best. We'll be giving the medication on site, and then things like EKGs that don't require any effort on the part of the participant will be done. The blood draws will happen, and then you'll go home. But really, the way the visits are lined up or outlined are really to enable you to do your best job with the outcome measures that are these assessments that we do at the beginning. The investigational product looks like this. The the Pridopidine and the placebo look the same. That's why it's called a matching placebo. And the drugs will be provided in exactly the same containers with the same looking labels. There are several things that are important supports. This program is very well supported for travel to the site. The Greenfire, which is a service that we've been using now for different trials for a few years, is done through the vendor called Greenfire helps manage travel. And that is really important in general, for patients who live far from the clinic site or the clinical trial site. But for ALS patients, it's even more important as you lose your independence to having car services, support with with train, with lodging in hotels that have adapted rooms, helps with any other visa services. Greenfire is actually now very experienced with ALS trials, and so able to really understand and manage being ALS appropriate in the recommendations. There are study materials that we'll be using. Some of them are educational materials. You see the clinical trials brochures. There's information to look for a site. You can go on the website or you can check at clinicaltrials.gov. And that's it. I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Taylor, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has. Now, where? There you are. Okay, good.
David might be frozen.
That Adva, that may
Yes.
be true. Okay, let's hope he comes back soon. Um, how would you like to handle the questions, Adva?
Going to just point out that there's several questions in the Q&A. I know there were some questions that were provided in advance. I was just hoping maybe Susanna or Carolina can let us know which ones Dr. Taylor was hoping to. Oh, maybe he
So
is back.
I got booted from Zoom. The minute
Oh,
I hit unmute and it booted me. I've never had that happen. I apologize.
we
Um,
saw you frozen on the screen.
oh, was I? Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Genge, for that. There's actually quite a number of questions in the chat. I wanted to quickly highlight a couple of things, just so people don't get confused as well. I think this is also and I will also want to note that we do have the executive medical director from Perlenia who's also on the call in case there's any questions. That's Dr. Niels Comfer. And just from both your standpoints, I wanted to confirm that for people who may be looking and seeing communications from Ferrer, that there's a partnership that's covering sort of the European side of the trial, so they don't get confused that this is two separate trials. Maybe you could just quickly comment, either of you, on that, just so for confusion point of the community.
Do you want me to take that one?
Yes, please.
Sure, absolutely. So, Prolinia is a rather small company, and in order to conduct an international study in ALS and also another one in Huntington's, we entered into a partnership with Ferrer, which is a company in Barcelona that largely has a footprint outside of the US. And they were a great partner, a background or experience in ALS and other neurodegenerative conditions, and alignment in regards to geography. And so we started that partnership in April of last year and have been working very closely together. So if you see Ferrer or Prolinia in regards to the PREVAiLS study or Pridopidine, we're working in close collaboration on the development.
Thank you. That's great. And the other two things I wanted to add really quickly was I remember when the Healy platform trial had just finished with the regimen D, and there had been talk about if you were moving to phase 3, what were some of the things to add? And I'm sure many people were saying this, and I remember thinking the travel expenses thing is really cool. I think that's really great. And then also I remember several people saying adding exploratory endpoints, and so. I know you kind of glazed over it because you had to, Dr. Gensch, but like having proof in there, this is a great opportunity with a large phase 3 clinical trial to get data on new outcome measures, for example. So I think, what you hadn't mentioned there is that's a novel one. And the more that we get those into these bigger trials, the more we can actually learn about their actual ability to use them. I know you've done a lot with outcome measures. Maybe you wanted to just talk about exploratory outcome measures in clinical
Oh,
trials.
oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks very much. So, we live right now and die on the mountain of the ALS FRSR, which we've used for a long time, and we understand what it looks like and how it should progress. We've done a lot of work on making sure it's very standardized, but it's extremely important for the field. and the people in the field that we find other ways of measuring improvement, and other ways of measuring progression. And so the ALS FRSR proof is a great next step. I think the other big thing in this program is the assessment of speech. And what's really cool about the Red and Lab approach is that particular developer of a speech tool also works in FTD and other neuro diseases. So we'll be able to compare the results both between arms and with other groups of patients so that we understand better the way speech changes in ALS. So I think both of these are really important. I also think there's a one questionnaire there on pseudobulbar affect that I think we need to put in to more trials. That we try not to take too much blood for biomarkers, but being able to take some samples to look in more detail on biomarkers will also help us.
Great. And actually, I do want to make sure I get some of the questions in the Q&A, but just digging into that really quickly, one of the unique aspects of this trial, and you mentioned this, was the fact that there may be something specifically bulbar associated with this because
Yeah.
we know that Nuedexta and or compounded dextromethorphan is a drug that's used for pseudobulbar effect and hits the sigma-1 receptor, as well as NMDA receptors, which we've seen were negative in other trials. So, do you think that? So, I have two quick questions on that. One is, do you think that there's an opportunity that if this does show something specifically on bulbar subscores, that there may be a pathway that doesn't hit the overall ALS or FRSR, but there's a possibility that this could be effective in helping bulbar symptoms in
I
a
think
subset?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. I think the needs surrounding bulbar symptoms are so great that I think if depending on the results, if we just hit the bulbar findings, the speech and articulation and the bulbar symptoms in the ALS-FRSR, there is absolutely a pathway because we already know from Nuedexta, which is quinidine and dextromethorphan, that you can, when you positively impact bulbar function, you may actually directly impact survival because you impact weight. And weight is probably our biggest, most objective marker of prognosis. And if you can slow down weight loss, you actually then end up prolonging survival. So I think it's a very close correlation.
And so I noticed that Nuedexta is in the eligibility criteria that you can be on Nuedexta as standard of care in, say, the US. What about if someone has it compounded and is in it in a different country? Uh, is that
We
still eligible? Do you know?
Yeah,
Or
we covered that. We actually covered that a couple weeks ago. And yes, if but they still have to be on a stable dose.
okay,
And it has to be compounded properly. It's got to have the same ingredients in the same doses, given it this in the same way, and it has to be stable. And
okay.
so there in Canada, it's almost universally done through established compounded pharmacies that follow the strict guidelines. Nils, is there anything more you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and hopefully, I guess one of the things is that hopefully that still manages to be able to see the bulbar subscores and like the complication of having Nuedexta, it must be really hard to manage that as standard of care in one place and then also be able to want to look at that in isolation to some extent. Anyways, I want to switch over because there are a couple good questions. One thing I was actually thinking about when you were speaking about this is, a 500-person trial. We haven't had one like that in ALS in a while,
Mhm.
but this actually feels like, and there was a question in the chat about how long we think it would take to enroll. But given that there aren't a lot of phase threes, it's an oral dose, it's well established in terms of safety profile. I feel like this is going to recruit pretty quickly, especially with 56 sites.
And
What do you think?
we're already taking off.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm expecting that as soon as with 3 sites in Canada, as soon as Europe comes on board, it's going to recruit really quickly.
yeah,
The really important thing here is that if you know of someone with ALS that'd be interested, they can't wait and think at home. They
yeah.
need to get to a site and be assessed because those criteria, those 18 months indefinite, they're pretty tight criteria, and that is the only thing that will slow down the recruitment. So go to a theater near you. It's called a clinical trial site. If you know someone, particularly if they have bulbar that are interested in the program.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask, like, if this is felt like this is a good example of why we need to push further and on more timely diagnosis pieces for trials that are going to end up having this, do you think that this was more a result, just opinion wise, between faster progressing individuals that got to diagnosis earlier, or do you think it's an earlier in disease thing that made the differential between the 36 months that the Healy platform allowed and what the 18-month subgroup was that ended up being the one that you're going for the phase three?
I think they got both,
Yeah.
because it couldn't have happened one or the other. But
Okay.
must have had sufficient numbers of patients that were close to their diagnostics, including those who were more fast progressors, to be able to make the analyses and to show the important difference in the populations.
Okay. Thank you. And there was a question as well, and I also had the same question, which is um, curiously why C9 was C9 or 72 expansion carriers would be excluded from the trial. Understanding FUS and SOD1 have other actionable places they can go. I guess there's one tiny C9 trial that's fully recruited right now, but was there a specific biological reason or?
I don't think there's a specific biological reason. I think it was true sporadic disease that we were looking for.
Okay.
And C9 patients often feel left out right now. So, other programs are looking to really target on them and will be coming soon. But I don't think it was specific biologically, except that this is a sigma 1 receptor a
Okay.
target and not a TDP-43 target.
Okay. Well, and yeah, and hopefully we'll have some C9 specific trials coming back in the years ahead a little bit
Yeah.
more. I had two other quick questions I want to hit on because I know we're running lower on time. One was around biomarkers and target engagement, understanding that it's a very well-known agonist of sigma 1 receptor, more than anything that's ever really been out there for that particular receptor. And that there are a lot of different pleiotropic aspects to what it could do downstream. Are some of the biomarkers that are going to be tested around target engagement, maybe downstream changes in certain biological pathways to possibly understand at the end of the trial what things might have been more predominant in terms of the 7 or 8 different mechanisms it acts on, or is it purely going to be mostly neurofilament
No,
for
the
you
good
know,
news is it's
baseline?
not purely going to be neurofilament.
Okay.
But what the panel will be, I don't think we're in a position to say right now.
Okay.
But remember, this drug is also being used in another disease, Huntington's disease.
Sure.
They're getting results there. So we're going to have and there's 500 people going into this trial. So we're going to have a lot of information and we're
Right.
going to have a lot of samples to analyze. So we have a huge opportunity with what we're collecting to be able to give additional information about the drug and its effect.
Great. Yeah, I just love to be able, as we can learn either way from every trial. If it's a positive trial, we can learn what to double down on. And if it's a negative trial, what can we learn not to do in the future? Always a question I have to ask, I think, everyone on Unboxed anyway. So that one's done. I did want to ask one last quick question because we are at the last minute. And that is it is a question that the community often asks. The US, they see expanded access for a lot of reasons that we don't have time to get into with Act for ALS and all of, et cetera. In Canada, do we think there's ever a place where expanded access will become a thing, or are we looking mostly at other mechanisms?
So I am not one of those people that's a proponent of expanded access. So I need to declare that up front. I think it's complicated, its use is complicated, and it doesn't actually get at what they want it to get at. What we have in Canada, which is, this is going to sound like a little promo, Dave, but I think it's really important. We have that something where we can get a program set up with Health Canada that's in a form of compassionate um, release of a drug. It's between Health Canada and the hospital pharmacy, and we have now four networks. One very new and it's not relevant today. Access is phase one, but we have the networks of CALS clinics across the country now. We even have one in PEI. We have CALS clinics everywhere now. And we have something called the CNDR, which is a registry that ALS patients can join. So we can use our ALS ecosystem to get real world evidence on drugs that are in any form of compassionate use without having to get complicated about who gets what once a drug is available through our special access program. So I think Canada does it better, but I'm only slightly biased. Um, because I think we have this wonderful setup where we have clinics everywhere. We can reach a lot of our patients, and we can get really good quality, true real world evidence that can be very important in the further development of the drug. So that's my promo for CALS,
Yeah.
CNDR, everything ALS.
No, and it's a tough question to ask in the last minute anyway. And I think it'll be on ALS Canada as well to have those kinds of conversations with the community to continue to push that forward in a more nuanced way where you have more than a minute to answer it. So thank you very much. We are at time, so really appreciate both of you being here. Thank you, Dr. Genge, for the presentation. Everyone out there, if there's further questions on the PREVAiLS trial, you can, of course, reach out to the relevant emails and connections that are both on the web and that you would have seen in the presentation, and also to research at als.ca if you have other questions. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And let's hope this recruits quick and we can get some good answers. And wishing everyone a great rest of their day. And we'll see you at the next ALS Clinical Trials Unboxed. Bye.
Take care now.